To all our investors and stakeholders listening to this podcast update, we've decided to produce an audio-only version for a couple of reasons. Darryn's just arrived back after finishing the one-to-one mining conference in Hong Kong, and we thought, as there was no accompanying presentation to specifically go with this update, then we would a podcast version might be easier for everyone to listen to. For those who might like to have a visual reference point, then they can always refer to the recent RNS relating to the capital cost estimate for the BKM feasibility study. That was released on March 20th. We've also recently released an updated presentation deck, which is available on the homepage of our website. Our update in this production is going to cover two main elements of the BKM project: the progress on the feasibility study to date and the financing post-feasibility study. So there are two topics which are very much in conversation at the moment, and I think there's quite a bit of detail that Darryn would like to go into that he might not have been able to go into a couple of weeks ago. Darryn, over to you. Perhaps we can start with your trip to Hong Kong and the one-to-one mining conference. It's like speed dating for miners and other companies, isn't it?
It's good to have a chance to sit down and and have a chat with you about quite a few things that we want to get through today. But just landed back in Jakarta from Hong Kong this afternoon, attending the one-to-one mining investment conference. So I guess one of the two preeminent Asian-focused mining events. But as you pointed out, it's quite unique in the approach that I guess it's not a true conference in the sense of the word, but really an opportunity for companies to be able to sit down with one-on-one with people and groups who are interested in the business and wanting to understand more about the work we're doing and how they can potentially help the businesses take their projects forward. So the main focus of the discussions over the last couple of days, groups I've been speaking to, updating our company strategy, what our near-term goals are, and certainly had quite a few discussions with the groups on how they could help with a range of approaches to financing, preferably non-dilutive financing options, and how we can bring things together as in an overall project finance package. So some really good discussions. A lot of things which are good for me to understand and appreciate and get feedback from. There's also some good discussions on how to engage within the Asian market, which I think is going to be really important for us, obviously given where we are and based in Southeast Asia. And looking forward, Asia's going to be one of probably a key growth engine of the world economy. Looking to the Asian market is looking to invest in projects, all over the world. But certainly, if they can find good projects closer to home, then that's certainly attractive to a range of different groups. And so putting our projects forward is really important. We have copper in Asia, and people are particularly interested in that. So it was a good couple of days, Sasha.
Well, it's obviously been quite a while since you've been able to market in Asia due to Chinese lockdown, and they've only been reopened for about 8 to 10 weeks now. I know that you wanted to have the full feasibility study in hand and completed prior to the conference. So how was it received with the data you have at the moment and the high level on the project?
On the FS, with completing some of the final numbers on the operating costs, as we've reported recently, the capex costs are largely done. So it's really just focusing on closing out some loose ends on the OPEX, which is very close, and then presenting to the board for a final review and sign off before we can release. This process it's nearly there. To draw a line under it as soon as possible and get stuck into the financing process. That's going to be one of our major catalysts moving forward, and especially looking at bringing how we can bring BKM on stream. In the discussions I had, being able to present what I could, and how we've taken the project from where it was to where it is now, and also talking about other aspects of the company, and of course what our sort of longer term vision looks like. It was positive. There is it's having advanced projects like this. We've done a lot of exploration work over the years that we've held these assets, and to have significant JORC compliant resources in the ground at such an advanced stage, and having an advanced stage study for our first operational project is actually a little bit unique, sort of compared to some of the other companies say that we're attending the conference. So we are well down the track, and a couple of groups were actually a little bit surprised about how advanced we were. So that was encouraging, and a lot of the groups I spoke to were also very keen to see the outcome of our most recent feasibility study and see how that may how they take that and how we might be able to do some work going forward. So I have quite a few follow-ups that I need to do as a result of the conference, and it was really clear that there is a huge appetite for copper. I think the industry, the information that's being presented, the industry is beginning to position for deficit and asking where the next production, where the next tons of copper production are going to come from. The energy transition, decarbonisation, those themes are still as strong as ever, and there is now, there is a growing realisation that the resources to deliver this are not going to be easy to find and develop, and those that have advanced projects, I think, are going to be well positioned to be able to seek financing and funding for development projects to be able to deliver these metals as required. I would like to follow up with a number of the groups that I spoke with over the last 2 days, but really it's really just trying to head down and get this FS completed and issued to the market.
Okay, right. Well, part of this process, taking any of these projects forward, it's obviously very important that you can get out there and market. So it's good that the conferences like this are happening again. Back to the feasibility study, Darryn, close to completion, and I think it was March 20th announced on the capex numbers. So if you want to take it away from there, please.
Yeah, sure. Yes. So we are very close to completion. I'm seeing a few final input numbers. As I mentioned just before, the operating cost aspect is really what we're finishing now. So I mean, just on the capex, I was pleased with where that number came out, and we can discuss that probably a little bit further, in a little bit more detail a little bit further on. But certainly, it's really just trying to get through the last few pieces of operating costs and doing checks and double checks, just making sure that we have everything covered, nothing missed. This is a bankable feasibility study, so it's really important that we do these checks and balances and just make sure that we haven't missed anything. So I mean, I'm happy with where I'm not happy that it's taken longer than we expected, but I guess I am happy with how it looks like the outcomes that it looks like we're going to be able to deliver out of the process. So we're very close to closing this out. At this stage, I'm planning to head to Melbourne on Tuesday to catch up and talk through this as part of our as part of our due diligence with internally to go through the feasibility study outcomes.
Okay, very good. So you've made a lot of progress recently, and it looks like you're in the final throes of this. So Darryn, you mentioned the capex figures which were released recently, and around the time you did record a short interview with Group Proactive Investors, but you didn't provide much context in that interview or the official release as to why the new capex number, being only slightly above the original capex cost estimates from 2019, was such a positive result, or an exceptionally positive result, as you outlined in the news release. So I thought that we might be able to step back a bit, and that investors might be able to, so that they might be able to appreciate the significance of what you and the team have achieved here. Perhaps outline what the capex figures could have been had you not reshaped and restructured, and had you stuck to the original 2019 parameters. I guess the equipment suppliers and plans outlined in 2019. There's obviously a huge amount of moving parts to this, so maybe provide some context around why that was such an exceptionally positive result.
Yeah, sure. So I was pleased with the result, and there were a few reasons for this. It's when we first started the review of the project, and the scope was as conceived in 2018 and 19. sort of early on in the project, and it was not long after I started. We did do I guess what you could say. We ran some numbers, some capex numbers with our engineer, UPro, just to see where we thought the capex may come out. Using having to do this, how do you say, building a facility the same that would be able to handle the capacity or the requirements of the 2019 study in terms of the total ore stack, like 56 million tons, and the processing rate of 8 million tons. All those sort of key input parameters. It was a coarse, I guess it was a pretty coarse number, and a pretty coarse approach, but it was not unreasonable, and the numbers that came out of that process were significantly bigger than we were expecting, and I'm talking sort of north of 300 million in that, and so understanding and looking at that, and looking at our project, and at the same time we were doing work on the updated pit optimization, and through those through those processes, it's through that process that we realised that the project was most likely, both of those coming together really sort of drove the option of looking at resizing the project, and not putting something in place that was so sort of significantly capital intensive for it's not that significant an increase in gains. So that's at that point in time, really wanted to have a look at how could we bring that capital cost back, because we knew that it was so important for the viability of the BKM project. And it took some time. We had to do, and this is part of the reason it's taken us longer than expected. And a lot of the activities have had to go back to first principles. So that's what we've done, and it took time for us to effectively reset all of the input parameters into this before we could then subsequently go out and start engaging with equipment suppliers and starting to bring in new equipment capital cost numbers. That's where we probably had to take an extra couple of months in the resizing of the project, and we had to put on hold the discussions that we'd had with equipment suppliers, etc., until we worked that out. So I started to get more confident in being able to realise the significant capex gains as we started to see some of the costs of equipment coming in at the smaller scale. Starting to see how those costs matched up against the previous cost estimate. So I started to get a stronger sense that yes, we were on the right path of doing something smaller, bringing this equipment size down, and really trying to shrink the footprint of the project to reduce the activity that we needed to do to try and bring that cost down. So in terms of those things, and that was what we were getting to at the end of last year. But then earlier this year, I was fortunate enough to engage with an EPCM group here in Indonesia, who I hadn't really been familiar with before, but sort of an opportunistic engagement where I'd seen they had been doing some work in materials handling, which is an important part of BKM's process, or all of the crushing and stacking that we do. So we engaged with that group, and became apparent that we had a really good opportunity for them to look at one of the really big packages across within the BKM flow sheet. So we got them working. They started working on that, and that obviously took a bit of extra time to be able to get that updated cost, but there were some really significant cost savings in doing that. And the same group was also able to give us pricing and costs for some of the bulk materials, such as electrical cable, HDPE pipe, some of the some significant big ticket items, and some really cost effective solutions came out of that. So certainly that all helped, all of those things, and this was all happening over sort of January and the early part of February, and we were busy putting together all of the capex costs at the same time, but new information was coming in almost constantly, sort of every couple of days, that saw us, sort of getting bits of parts of the process and parts of the project being able to reduce their cost, and I guess whittling our way whittling down the very first sort of detailed capex cost that we started with, and yeah, the ultimate outcome is the current one which we issued, as you said, on the 20th, $236.5 million, with the $26.5 million in growth and contingency included. Not too far above the previous capex, so I'm quite happy with that. But we can talk a little bit later. We think there's still, I do believe there's still some opportunities that we can realise to reduce costs. Of course, we'll be at the end of the day, can see how that's progressing, and who knows, one might stop it 1 or 2 months earlier if it looks like we've got all the copper out. But that's the standard plan sees copper production finishing effectively on 10 years.
I think shareholders were expecting in February the whole updated feasibility studies piece. So thanks for going into the reasons why you needed some extra time on the capex. And I assume the OPEX was the OPEX was included in that extra time, which is necessary, but for good reason. So potentially, I think, are you happy to talk about the OPEX, the operating cost estimates that you've been working on now and how they're going?
I mean, there'll be a few points that we probably touch on here, Sasha, but I mean, regarding the estimate, it has, like some of the other things, it has taken longer than I would have liked or expected to close out. I mean, I'm finalising some of these pieces today, receiving information yesterday and today, just to close out some final questions and clarifications on information that we've been presented. I mean, it's important that, of course, we need to have information and backup of all of the assumptions and all of the inputs that go into, well, both models, both capex and opex. But capex is usually a little bit more straightforward, but opex, opex, when you're looking at all of the mining and the processing and our G&A sort of costs, there's a lot of things that go and a lot of inputs that go into those. So we're still receiving some sort of key final pieces of the puzzle for that. And I'm really sort of looking at the closeout of that imminently. I mean, hoping I can see, after we finish talking today, I'll be reviewing some information that's just come through, and I'd like to think that I'll be closing this out. I mean, we can't forget this is a bankable feasibility study, and just need to make certain that everything is covered that needs to be, and we have the confidence in those cost models to ensure the banks and their independent technical experts also have confidence as well.
Okay, thanks, Darryn. So in the face of huge mining industry inflation, you've obviously had some big wins. So what about opportunities which might have slipped away or which you've not had time to address yet? What about the optimization program, which you've outlined related to capex? Can you talk about that? And then potentially we can move on to what the completion of the updated feasibility study will mean for investors. But if you could outline some of your optimization plans, then this would be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, looking for ways to improve outcomes is maybe good or bad. It is part of my DNA as a mining professional. It's something that's been driven into me from early in my career, and it's something that's sort of carried through with me in my work in operations. In a sense of never stop looking for ways to improve things. I can say that the same approach has been taken with the current BKM study, and supported by our technical and engineering resources. We've continued to sort of chip away and look at a whole range of things that we can improve in relation to the overall project. So I mean, it has taken some time, but I think the value that we've derived from doing that will be realised when we do release the feasibility study. That being said, I mean, we have had to draw a line in the sand and close off some areas to get the FS done, reported, and kick off the subsequent processes related to project financing. We do have an excellent opportunity, though, sort of one particular point. We do have an excellent opportunity to make a meaningful impact on capex cost and time to execute the project by looking at a potential relocation of the heap leach facility. This is probably the one single thing that I really want to have a look at, in parallel with work we're doing post release of the FS. The heap leach facility, its development is the critical path task for the whole project. So all other project activities fit within this task. A relocation of the facility to an area that requires less less earthworks, and a more straightforward construction process will reduce the volumes we need to move from an earthworks perspective, and will also reduce the time. And both of those will contribute meaningfully to a reduction in project cost. So, as I mentioned, I really want to do some work on this with our engineer and have a look at and do this sort of body of work in parallel as we're going through the independent technical review process with the banks, because that's the first part that we have to go through. So, yeah, I think there is a really good opportunity to look at a reduction in capex cost, or certainly protect the upside of the capex by being able to pull down the scope of work we do for the heap leach.
So let's touch upon the outstanding OPEX numbers, which could potentially complete the feasibility study, or which will complete the feasibility study. How's your work on the OPEX been going so far, and how do you think this might feed the final feasibility study?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've spoken a bit about some of the OPEX costing earlier, but taking some of the specific comments in the last announcement, it was clear that there's been upward pressure in aspects of mining operations, most notably, and this was in discussions with various groups, most notably things related to explosives, particularly ammonium nitrate. Obviously some global things happening there, but also some more specific things happening here in Indonesia. That being said, also starting to see that some of those pressures start to abate now, and a bit of tapering of costs for ammonium nitrate. And certainly earlier in the year, diesel pricing was quite high, relatively speaking. But we've also seen that start to trend down a bit over this period. So, yeah, I mean, I've been doing quite a lot of work on mining cost area and understanding that, and that work is largely complete now. Just there was one aspect which we've been working on in the last week that's been quite important for the mining operations around water management. So that's coming to a close. In saying that, our approach to developing the operational cost for mining in this study, I believe, is comprehensive, and it will pass the technical review. I mean, we've also taken on board, the comments from the ITE relating to mining operations and costs. There was quite a few guiding points that were recognised from the previous study, which we've taken on board, and I'm confident that we have addressed those adequately in the work that we've done this time. So I'm happy. I'm happy with where that work has got to, and our confidence and our confidence level in those numbers. I think an important part as well on the OPEX side, and I guess it's a combination of OPEX and CAPEX. We have finalised our integrated financial model for the project, and the outcomes we see from running the model on the current CAPEX and OPEX inputs are pretty positive compared to the 2019 study. So, it's an important piece of work. That's our overall financial model. Our team has compiled that, and now we're running the scenarios as we're making final adjustments to the numbers. See the final outcomes, the final NPV IRR outcomes from the project. So it's really it's really good that model is having that model constructed and checked now is a really useful tool for me as I'm finishing off these final points. So once we get these final OPEX points into the FS, that effectively completes all of the financials. The last of our technical, from an FS perspective, we received the final technical reports from our consulting groups, and now we're just busy also writing up all of the technical chapters. But the key points into the financial outcomes will be done with these last few OPEX numbers.
I hope that a lot of us shareholders and stakeholders are encouraged by that. So, I mean, quite understandably, the market has put a huge focus on the completion of the updated feasibility study. So I thought it might be useful if you could once again outline the significance of completing this as soon as possible.
There's been a lot of really good work that has been done as part of this update by all of the people that have study. I think we've done really good work on pit geotechnical conditions. We've been doing some work on hydrogeology modelling. Certainly, we've done a lot of things that set us up really well going forward as we're able to do additional investigative work. And I think probably, we've done a really great body of work on how we manage water on the site and integration of everything related to water management, which is such a critical aspect for success of a site like BKM, given the climate that we have to manage there. So, it's really, I think all of this work has really contributed to a strong FS, and I'm fully expecting that banks and their independent technical reviewers will appreciate that. I mean, the significance of all this, bringing to a close an issuance of the FS is, it's our launch pad into being able to effectively market the project to shareholders, new and old, new stakeholders, and certainly being able to take forward the financing process. That's the key. We need this to be able to engage confidently on financing.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the financing process now, Darryn. So what are the plans around that, and how soon after the bankable feasibility study is completed can you begin the finance process, and what will this involve?
There'll be a range of options, I think, in how we approach this. But certainly the large debt providers such as banks, they're waiting on the FS, and they'll be keen to. We have already spoken. We have engaged with banks over the course of the last 12 months, and the work with the ITE was an outcome of that engagement, and that's why one of the key reasons we did that body of work to be able to feed in and understand what the banks are going to be looking for. So, or what their independent experts are going to be looking at to ensure that it's bankable taking forward. I think there's of course a range of other opportunities, like sort of on our own side, sort of moving away from the debt and looking at our own side. Certainly been a lot of interest from cathode offtake providers. We've had discussions with probably at least 4 groups around that. Bringing cathode into the Asian market is certainly attractive, and I think once the FS is completed, those groups, of course, also have to do their own due diligence on the project, and they're waiting for final studies. But I know some of the groups had already done some due diligence work previously, and I think be relatively straightforward for them to be able to sort of close that out early on, and it would be nice to be able to look at how we can progress some of those to give just keep adding to the confidence that we're taking a project forward to financing and being able to build and get this into production. So I think, one of the interesting, I guess, aspects of the time spent in Hong Kong, certainly there's probably a number of alternative avenues to project financing, and different groups, whether they be advisory groups or even companies, sort of look at different ways of how they may want to look at investing in companies or projects. I still think that there's certainly some opportunities that groups are interested in particular assets within Asiamet, whether that be BKM or whether that be KSK and BKM to start with, or whether that be Butong. Some different groups have different needs and requirements when they're looking at projects. So I think that there'll be some really good opportunities that come up on. Once we can effectively market the project with our feasibility study and the financials and looking at how we can take it forward, I think there'll be some creative things that can be done to look at financing this project and taking it forward.
A lot of our investors will be very keen to understand where Darryn are as our largest investor, prospective partner. So could you just go into that and where they stand with everything that's been going on thus far?
As was announced with Darryn's further investment back in November, there would be two board places made available to Darryn representatives, and those processes are sort of in the final, when I say sort of in the final throes of completion. We hope going through the final bits, the final pieces of due diligence requirements. That should be closed out very soon in the not too distant future. Darryn, like as an investor in Asiamet, they are also very keen to see the outcome of the feasibility study and wanting to understand the economics and the economics of the project and looking at how we can take this forward. You said that Darryn's relationships in financing, project financing, deal financing, very, very strong relationships with advisory groups, financial service providers. We're very keen to tap into those connections and be able to take those positive connections that Darryn have with the markets, with banks, with advisory groups and service providers to be able to give us a good opportunity to come up with a good project financing package for BKM. So they're very keen. As we have said all along, they are supportive of the business. This is a significant investment, for Darryn, and they are keen to, as they have publicly stated, they are keen to build out a metals business, which to complement the work that they do in coal. So, this BKM is a project that they want to see succeed, as do all of our shareholders. The incentives are there for us to be successful in delivering this project, and then on doing so, being able to show how we can demonstrate a path forward for growth of this business into the future. As well, Sasha, in November, Darryn showed commitment to Asiamet as a business in the further $3 million investment, which has been critical in allowing us to continue with the feasibility study and making that commitment, knowing that there was still work still to be done on the FS was a strong sign of their willingness to back us and back the work that we're doing to take this forward. So I think that's a positive, and noting that the support in November has allowed us to have a significant cash balance as we're talking now, and continue to give us some significant runway as we go into the financing process. And yes, they do still elect or hold the option for a further $5 million investment at headco level at the 20% premium. Of course, we'd like to see our share price certainly higher than where it is now, and with getting some additional work, getting positive news about the feasibility study and flow on effects from that, I would like to see us start to see the share price turn back around again.
To wrap up now, I guess the share price has been quite weak since the recent CapEx update, probably in part due to the further delays and a lack of a timeline, all coming at a very wobbly part in the market. Do you think the market should be refocusing upon the value within the shares at these levels?
Absolutely, Sasha. I'm not only inside in terms of the information I have, but I'm also in a closed period now, and I will be buying more shares when I'm able to, which will be sort of further into April. I fully appreciate that the market needs timelines, and we're nearly there now, and we should be able to update shortly, either update on the completion of the FS and sort of dates to be taken forward. Where, as we've already explained through this discussion, given an idea, in terms of sort of my engagement with Tony in terms of delivering him information on the FS. It's happening next week. Those sort of that's the state we're at the moment. So we're really close to closing this out. So we're in the final throes of this, and I am happy with the way things have gone and the way that we've been able to pull some things in recently. We're going to release an FS that's robust and executable. The project will be leveraged, will be highly leveraged to the copper price, and with predictions for a strengthening copper prices into the future. I'd recommend that our investor base take note of the numbers that we put out in the FS that relate to copper price sensitivities, and just sort of see the type of leverage that the project has as you start to see small increases in copper price. So I think that's a positive. To be honest, there's not too many commentators out there that are suggesting copper prices are going to decrease. Certainly not with the state of the market at the moment. And I think that, I mean, one last point to make, that we get BKM financed, we get it complete construction and get it operational. That really is just the beginning. I mean, BKM is the enabler for the KSK contract of work, and there's potentially hundreds of millions, if not more, in revenues from our portfolio in additional development of copper resources that are just associated with BKM and how we approach that. And of course, BKZ with the polymetallics, and we dearly love to be able to do a bit more exploration and expand our resource base there. In the recent presentation we've just put onto the website, articulating how I saw Asiamet as a whole and our two current projects, how we stage the development of those, only focusing on copper. I do make mention of BKZ in KSK strategy, but haven't had a chance to put numbers to that yet. But just looking at the way that copper evolves over time between BKM and Butong, I think there is really a good opportunity for delivering a sustained long-term growth of this business. We need to be looking forward and understanding. Although I'd like to think that maybe our target for sort of long-term copper production is higher than 60,000 tonnes a year of copper, and there's certainly some opportunities with respect to that. But if we look at everything put together, if we look at copper, gold, silver, everything, and lead, zinc, all the things that come together, if you were to put all of that as equivalent copper, you'd certainly see some high levels of overall metal production coming out of our profile. So it's really an exciting opportunity. But you have to start. That's probably the key thing, Sasha. You've got to get your first project running. That's the critical thing, and I guess that's where a significant amount of our focus on is, of course, at the moment. So a lot to come, Sasha. I mean, look forward to getting through these next stages, in a short period of time, delivering the feasibility study and being able to get out and market this to our group. So I'm certainly keen to come back over to London after we've released the FS and be able to engage with people personally and have those conversations about how we see the FS and how we see it being taken forward, and certainly giving people firsthand, being able to interact personally and take people through this. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks, Darryn. Lots of detail for investors to reflect on there, and glad to hear you are so upbeat. Look forward to hearing from you again shortly.
Good one. Thanks, Sasha, and thanks for your time, and thanks to our shareholder base and stakeholders for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Really appreciate it.